Hello everyone, this is Raphael.
And I'm Loryn.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, the talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. So, I wanted to briefly open this podcast with talk about Ukraine, because even though all of our episodes thus far have released after the invasion of Ukraine began, still, this is actually the first episode we're recording after that happened. Mm-hmm. Obviously, circumstances have vastly changed since the last two episodes we've recorded.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend too much time here for a number of reasons, just because, I don't want it to be too much of a downer if there's anybody coming to this podcast as like a way of escape from that sort of those sort of affairs. And also the fact that information and news on that is changing very rapidly on a daily basis at this point. So really anything we can say may likely be antiquated by the time you even listen to this. And also, I don't want to talk too much about it analytically, which is, how we would sort of talk about it perhaps in some of our casual conversations. But I think there are people out there who are contributing to that conversation a lot more meaningfully than we would be able to. Mm-hmm. And, we don't bring any sort of expertise to the table, I don't think, when it comes to the geopolitics or the tactics or anything like that. So I would just want to take a brief moment to at least acknowledge Ukraine and, as the sort of elephant in the room, and maybe speak a bit more personally about our thoughts about it, rather than, logistically or academically in any sense. So I don't know, how have you been feeling? How's that been kind of sitting lately?
When I brought this up to you earlier, which at this point was several weeks ago, like I remember saying we invaded Iraq, the U.S. invaded Iraq in my lifetime.
Right.
Like I remember when that happened.
Yeah. I
do not remember feeling like this when it was my country going to war. Like this is a completely different feeling. And I don't know if it's just because I'm older now and I have a better understanding and I just have there's more context for me to understand what is actually happening, even though this is not my country. Our country is only like tertiary. It's only involved like tertiarily, if that's even a word. It feels a lot more impactful to my life directly than when my actual country went to war in my lifetime.
Yeah. And that's not to mention 9/11 as well, was technically also within both of our lifetimes. I honestly have no recollection of it. I would have been very young.
Yeah.
I know most people are supposed to remember where they were when it happened, but even that impacts our nation was a lot more directly because that was an attack on our soil. And even that, again, I don't even remember it, but this historical moment right now just stands out to me a lot more. And it is probably more so, a maturity thing like you were suggesting. And it's been, obviously it's just tragic and it's really troubling and it's really occupied a lot of my thought and prayer life as of late.
Yeah.
So I suppose, that's sort of been our initial reactions to it. But again, I don't want to linger too long on it and I don't want to be exploitative of it at all in any sense. So just, I guess to anybody who's out there who's listening, obviously there's a lot of feelings to process for just about everybody right now, but it's been very interesting to see unfold these massive events that are just having such a wide impact. But it's been kind of encouraging, more so than anything to me, to see how globally unified the reaction has been.
Yeah. That is true.
Even within Russia's borders, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's been so much opposition. It feels like for the first time we're seeing a lot of agreement on something that is truly terribly bad. Yeah,
just everybody's just collectively on the same page for this. Pretty much the only people that I can tell who basically have anything else to say about it that doesn't seem like a genuine emotional reaction have an agenda of some kind, or unfortunately are subject to a kind of propaganda that is not. Well, we'll get into, we don't want to get too much into that, but it seems like for the most part,
bottleneck.
Yeah, it seems like for the most part, everybody who has had an emotional and a genuine emotional reaction to what's going on, everybody agrees this is not good.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, so like I said, don't want to linger on that too long,
Right.
but definitely didn't want to go without acknowledging it either. And yeah, again, in sort of talking about establishing the boundaries that we wanted to have for this podcast. Again, this podcast is young, so we're still trying to figure that out. But we also don't want to ignore stuff that we would otherwise be talking about in our conversations, seeing as that's the basis of this podcast, is trying to just put the conversations that we normally have on display, so to speak.
Yeah, and we're still trying to figure out the scope of this podcast and what we feel comfortable putting out there from our personal opinions.
Yeah, and our personal lives even. Because obviously in our casual conversations, we'll talk a lot about just personal stuff that probably doesn't need to be out there.
Yeah, of course. And being a, I guess, what's the term? A public individual, a public person, a person of public interest is not really my intention. I don't want the tabloids to be following me type of thing, right? I don't like the idea of having my entire life being open. However, my opinions are free. And I think there's a certain amount of our personal lives that I would be open to sharing just insofar as they would be beneficial for others, I think. Of course.
And especially I think as maybe perhaps not with more recent events, but perhaps as we get older, we'll see, what we feel more comfortable sharing about and what we think can be of value from our own personal lives and stories to helping others.
Especially as somebody who has, or just like talking from places of experience, we eventually want to be able to talk about these things openly. But of course, after going through the process of incorporating it into our life and then being able to talk about it with wisdom as opposed to reactionarily.
Yeah. Because as much as we'd like to think we know everything, we are still young, and we're
not even 30 yet.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, neither of us are 30 yet. And really, there probably is a lot more, as you say, development and healing that needs to be done before we can talk with any wisdom about any of our experiential stuff.
Yeah, we have gone through a lot, and we have processed much of it, but I don't think it's gotten to the point where we're at a point where we can teach about that.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, so getting away from the heavy stuff for a moment, well, I suppose we got a lot to talk about. We have a laundry list of topics that we have not been getting through very quickly.
We have made a list.
Well, I want to talk very briefly about, first, I guess, I don't ever want to be too uncomfortable about plugging other stuff on the show. Can we agree about that?
Yeah.
Like, if we think stuff is dope, we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm all about platforming other people who...
Yeah. I don't even care. It's like, technically everybody's competing for everybody's attention in the content sphere, but like, I don't want to think in those terms. I want to speak conversationally here.
If I want to talk, if you're my friend, I am going to show you stuff that I like, so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So like so like we want to be able to show you, listener of this podcast, dope stuff so that you can understand what we're talking about and get excited with us.
All right. So that being said, let's talk about some competitors. Okay.
let's talk about other podcasts.
Yeah. I did want to talk about other podcasts a bit. Well, I mean, it's weird because podcasts are a thing that I have not historically been into, but in the last couple of years especially, I've been getting more and more into the podcast world, and that's what led to really solidifying wanting to do this as a podcast. But yeah, there are a lot of podcasts I listen to. I know there are a lot of podcasts you listen to as well, and there are probably some overlap, but also a lot of distinctions. I think we have very different sort of resources and things that we go to podcasts for. But one of my favorite podcasts is called the Holy Post Podcast. It's hosted by Phil Vischer, who is most known for being the creator of VeggieTales.
Which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, that was a huge part of our childhood for sure. And yeah, still, very big cultural piece of media in a lot of evangelical circles. So yeah, he created VeggieTales. It's got a number of other people. Skye Jitani, a former preacher and author. You've got Christian Taylor, Caitlin Chess, Christian Taylor being a filmmaker and Caitlin Chess more an academic type, but great roundtable.
You got quite the spread of academic study.
Yeah. And so they recently celebrated their 500th episode, which was super awesome. I actually think it's a great jumping on point for people who are curious about that podcast because they actually recap a lot of the major topics of conversation that they've been having over the past 10 years doing that podcast for 500 episodes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is that's a weekly, right?
Yeah, it's a weekly show.
I was gonna say, that would be about, that's a
52 weeks a year. So yeah, that is 500 episodes is about 10 years.
That's insane.
Approximately. Right. It's going to be like, it's closer to like 520, but like if you're at 500, you could talk about
it's basically,
I mean, that'd be a much weirder milestone. Like that would trigger someone's OCD.
Yeah.
But anyway, they actually put out a call for their patrons, of which I am a supporter, looking for people to submit voice memos to be part of their 500th episode. And I was like, hey, I really support this show and I really like what they do. I think they have very intelligent and nuanced conversations about culture and politics from a Christian perspective. And so I was like, I have a great recording setup and I really support the show and I'm all about what they do. I think I'm going to go ahead and go for that. And I actually made it into that 500th episode special, which was kind of a highlight of my week.
Yeah.
When I realized that.
I have that episode queued up to listen to because I think you said, like, if there's any one episode to listen to, this is like one of the top 5. Oh
yeah, for sure. This is definitely, if you listen to any one episode of the Holy Post, because you don't obviously normally listen to that kind of content, but I would highly recommend it if you listen to any one, because again, it's just such a microcosm and a touchstone of like everything they've been talking about.
Right.
It's also the only episode, maybe not the only episode, but one of the few episodes so far that has both Christian and Caitlin in the same episode, because usually they
kind of swap off.
Yeah, they kind of swap off. That slot's kind of open to both of them, and they change it in and out whenever, depending on who's available. And and then they're all back in studio. It's really cool, but it's a really fun podcast. Genuinely, like I said, it has very nuanced and intelligent commentary and conversation, but it's also just incredibly entertaining.
Yeah.
Phil Vischer is a genuinely hilarious guy.
Yeah.
And all of them are just such great personalities and really deep thinkers.
Right. Like, it's not exactly the kind of thing I would go out of my way to consume, but I always enjoy whenever you bring me juicy stuff from that podcast. And it's like, oh, yes, let's talk about whatever it is we talked about this week.
Oh, yeah. And plus, yours truly makes a little bit of a cameo in that episode, so all the more reason. But it is a great episode, and they have a lot of great little bits just for that episode. They call it a 500th episode extravaganza, and it is...
Oh, you got to make it special.
Genuinely an extravaganza. Like, there's so much, like, because Phil also makes all the jingles for their podcast for whenever they can transition to segments and stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so he made a couple of new songs for their 500th episode that are all really great, including one that's basically just designed to be a summary of their past 10 years of podcasting, it's just called Crazy. And it is a hilarious and awesome song, but also a genuinely succinct summary of the past 10 years of evangelicalism. It's like the we didn't start the fire of the evangelical subculture. It's a great song. I'm glad they put out the music video as a standalone. I'll show you it afterwards.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's great.
We can post that reference down in the description.
Yes. Or the show notes.
Show notes, that's what it's called
now. Yeah. We'll definitely link everything we're talking about in the show notes. And I also to kind of backtrack a bit, we mentioned Ukraine at the beginning and how there are a lot of people doing a lot more informative discussion and conversation about the nitty gritty of the geopolitics and other information regarding that conflict. We'll probably link some of the resources that we've been using. Like
our news sources.
Yeah, our information pipelines, just in case anybody wants to dive deeper with that. But like I said, I don't think that's something we're in any position necessarily to do.
Yeah. We'll mostly just be regurgitating any information we've consumed anyways. We don't have any actual, like, primary source information.
Yeah, precisely. So anyway, that was just something I wanted to gush about because that was again one of those highlights of my week.
Getting on a podcast is exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah. We should get people excited about coming on this podcast, that's coming soon.
If you want to get on this podcast, well, I guess you have to wait.
You know where to reach us. We have a website now.
Yeah, we do. And it's dope. You should go look at it. It's we've been
PachecoProjects.com, just to say verbally within the
PachecoProjects.com. We've been doing a little bit of I don't know what you would call it.
Renovations?
Renovation?
Oh yeah. It's looking great now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can always reach us there. And of course, you could it's pretty easy to find our contact for P-Cubed, because it's on the YouTube channel and stuff as well. So, and not to mention, I feel like we should plug this more often because we plugged it once and then just sort of let it sit where all the links are found. But our Discord server, the
Right,
P-Cubed
yeah.
community Discord, is probably like the easiest way to access and interface with us
And
directly.
just directly talk
Yeah.
to us. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like,
and just
we're
and
always
also
there.
to meet everybody, you know, that's a part of the P-Cubed family and our entire community. There are all sorts of people that we kind of interact with on that community server. And there are some people that are like regulars to our content, either in our Twitch chat or in our comments and other places that are on there as well. Like it's a fun time.
Yeah. Come
So
hang out.
yeah, we don't do enough plugging. Have you ever considered how little we plug stuff?
Man, Raph, the only plugging I do is my ears lately.
That's true. You've been getting back into piercing.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I recently had I just had this urge to put all my piercings back in. Like I took them all out when I came here, or not like immediately. I think within a couple of years of coming to PA, I took them all out, and then recently I put them all back in.
Yeah. What prompted that?
I have no idea.
It was just a
genuinely,
feeling?
I think it was just more so the fact that we talked about this earlier, but we went on a big personal journey of mine, like
Is it like
discovering myself and realizing that it's like, you know,
reconnecting?
yeah, like just reconnecting with myself and realizing that I think piercings just are a really big part of my identity, and I did miss them, and I missed having that option for self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my plugs back in. I put most of my facial piercings back in. I'm not going all out like I did in high school. Thankfully, I'm a little bit more tasteful, but a lot of them are going back in, and oh my gosh, I have learned so much since I was a kid. I am now actually putting like good jewelry in my face that won't destroy my teeth. That was a problem when I was young. I have 2 tongue piercings, and when I was a kid, steel barbell with steel ball ends in my mouth destroyed my teeth.
Oh man.
So many chips. Oh my gosh, it was a bad time. But now acrylic, nice like plastic basically. I can chew on these all day and I won't break my teeth.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
I love it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now here's a question, because, you know, obviously you're also, you know, even though you're super artsy, I mean, obviously we're both artists of sorts.
Yes. Artistes.
You're also like, I think most people perhaps who only interface with you publicly, you know, through our content, don't entirely realize you're also like a hard pragmatist as well.
This is true.
So that's what I was often wondering about, like when it comes to piercings and just like implanted jewelry, you know what I mean? Is like, how does that work from a pragmatist perspective when you're always thinking about like self-defense and situational awareness and all that?
This is something that I had to come to grips with. Well, one of the reasons at first I thought I wanted to take my piercings out was because like, oh yeah, if I'm going to practice self-defense and all this other stuff, if I have a piece of steel on my face and someone punches me, that's not going to be good. That's going to dig into my flesh. That's going to cause huge bleeding, and that's going to just be a whole mess of problems. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to take them out so I can, you know, practice self-defense and not have to worry about getting punched in the face. And then I realized, if I'm getting punched in the face, something bad has already happened.
Right.
Getting punched in the face with a piece of steel in my lip isn't going to make that any worse. I've already gotten punched. The point is to not get punched, not to make getting punched hurt less.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so if I have jewelry, it shouldn't matter if, for example, if I'm practicing self-defense and having situational awareness, having a piece of jewelry in my face shouldn't matter because I shouldn't be getting punched.
Right. You're saying like getting punched in the face with jewelry is just as bad as getting punched in the face.
Yeah. So
like it's just as bad a situation.
Yeah. So I was like, why was that even a consideration of mine? Well, obviously, I was also young and dumb. That's mostly it. I was young and dumb, and that's why I took them all out. Unfortunately, a lot of the holes like healed, so I had to like re-pierce them. Anyways, but yeah, I put them back in. I'm not using steel or stainless steel for much of my jewelry anymore. I'm mostly using acrylic. So even if I did get punched in the face, it wouldn't hurt as much.
What about grabby hands?
That's fine.
Well, you'll grab them right back.
Here's a problem too. Like with my ears. Oh, so I also have 2 gauges in my ears. There's a top and a bottom. The bottom one at its largest was an inch big. So
it's pretty big.
It's pretty big. It is never going to be like a normal ear size again without surgery. So without jewelry in, somebody could still stick their finger in my ear and pull. Right. So I might as well put jewelry in it, make it look good while it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, at that point, like, you know, if somebody's resort in that far.
Yeah.
Like you could do a lot more hurt in return.
Yeah, if somebody decides to like go for my ear and is like, I'm gonna rip your ear off, I'm like, oh, okay, so we're at that level now.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Time to re-stomp the groin.
Re-stomp the groin several times. You can take my ear. I'm gonna take something else. There was just a whole lot of that kind of, I don't know what you call it, like backwards logic that you find in a lot of self-defense, where it's like, all right, we're going to teach you how to defend yourself from, or like how to get out of being in the trunk of somebody's car handcuffed with like, like 20 layers of duct tape on you. It's like, if you've gotten to that position already,
you failed.
Like, good luck getting out. But like, if you're good enough to get out of 20 layers of duct tape handcuffed in the back of somebody's car, you can also stop them from putting you in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of strangeness in the broader self-defense industry and culture. But it's mostly, I suppose, a culture that evolved out of the industry. Yeah, right, because it had to make money first.
Oh, it's purely sensationalism, right? Like bad news gets more press. So, like, if you tell somebody, "I'm going to prevent you from getting hurt," I mean, the best advice for that is to run away every time. Teach people how to run, and you have taught them self-defense. That's boring. Yeah. People don't want to be told, give me $500 a month and I will make you jog faster. That's not fun. That's not why people purchase things.
Well, it's also kind of preying on people's fears.
It's true.
Because it's like,
it is inherently predatory, unfortunately. It's a kind of weird kind of
yeah. Yeah, which is very bizarre when you think about it. But yeah, it is kind of preying on people's fears insofar as what people think about. Right. The reasons that people think that they need self-defense are what's coming to mind when they're walking through the doors. Right.
Yeah. Everyone thinks of like the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Everyone's thinking the worst case scenario is like, oh, what if I get, kidnapped or, any sort of thing, someone tries to mug me on the street. It's like, that's where everybody's mind is jumping to.
Yeah.
And they think of those scenarios and then think I need self-defense.
Yeah. Like everyone's thinking of Taken and not thinking like just have a buddy system.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing is even if you look at Taken, let's talk about Taken for a second. Taken is, I think the first Taken, I haven't seen it, the other two.
I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to, but the first Taken I have seen. Yeah. And that's actually, I think, a pretty well-written movie, in my opinion.
Very well written.
Because if you really look at the scenarios that they present, situational awareness and a buddy system and preventative measures would have stopped them from getting kidnapped, right? Yeah. Like you see all the red flags, you see the enabling buddy, you see, like lack of awareness of social engineering, right? Right. Like that's pretty much all I think that scenario that they presented was the girl got kidnapped because of like with social engineering, right? It was easy to find out her information from somebody just walking up to her and asking her questions. Yeah. It's like, it's a pretty good PSA for proper self-defense insofar as if you ignore like the everything after the first act, right? Right. Because it's like this is what happens. That's the part that everybody wants when they go after self-defense. But self-defense would have been able to save that girl before she ever gets kidnapped. Right.
Self-defense happens before you throw the first punch. Before the first punch is ever thrown. That's when self-defense happens. I don't want to like straight up just put like a blanket, here's what self-defense is, but here's what self-defense is. Are you ready for this? Pay attention. That's number one.
That's fair.
Like know who's around you, know where your exits are, know where entrances are, know how people carry themselves and what red flags are if somebody's being aggressive. If somebody is drunk, don't be around them. If you are out in public and somebody is drunk, not being around them is a very good way to stay out of trouble. Period. Have good cardio. If you need to run, surviving is, or if you need to like get out of a situation, surviving simply is outrunning your opponent. If you can get into a position where you can last longer than them, that's going to increase your survivability by a long time, or at least increasing your, not survivability. I don't want to say like you're going to die, but it would prevent your chances of getting hurt in any way because people prey on people who are alone. If you can get from a place where you are alone to a place where you're not, getting to that place is crucial. But I guess that's basically it, is know when to run and know how to run.
Mm-hmm. And of course, never risk your life for anything that's not worth risking your life for.
That is true. If you, that is fair, because there are also aspects of those two things are how to not be a victim. How to prevent other people from getting hurt as well is something that you have to keep in mind when it comes to defense, or I guess not the defense of the not self. I don't know. That's a little bit harder to market.
Yeah.
Fighting
that's just
is what it comes down to. Yeah, fighting is what it comes down to. Defense is a terrible defense, by the way. Never be defensive. Be offensive. The best defense is a good offense. Yeah, just know if somebody is taking something from you, give it to them. If you can get another one, it is not worth hurting yourself or somebody else over.
And it's worth noting I think most, just so the point isn't argued, that includes money. Because most people will say like, I can't get new money. I earned that money. But it's like, it's not, it's never worth your life.
And also that making it so that you aren't in those situations. So don't keep like $1,000 of cash on you so that somebody comes.
You can cancel your cards. It's like everything else.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, give me your wallet and your phone. It's like, okay, that's locked. That's going to get canceled. Have fun with that piece of leather.
Yeah.
It's those things.
You'll be very inconvenienced by losing your ID, though.
That is very true.
You should
That's
ask,
like $35. Yeah, $35 to the DMV. It's like, hey, can I get my ID? He's like, no, I want to know where you live. I don't know.
Well, it's like, consider just asking kindly. It's just like, look, man, I'm going to cancel my card.
Yeah.
You can't do anything with my license before I call it into the government.
Also
like,
consider
can I please just take the cash?
Yeah.
I would also like to keep the leather wallet. Like, you can't do anything with that either.
Yeah. Also consider like where these people are coming from. If somebody is trying to take something from you, it's because they are in need. If somebody is like robbing you, giving them money is probably a good idea. They might need it. Or rather, giving them something is a good idea because they might need it. Giving them money might mean it might go to someplace else, but like buy them like food, that might be an option. Like it's like, hey, you're robbing me. All these cards are gonna get canceled. I don't have enough cash on me for it to be worth it. Would you like a meal?
You just Uno reverse carded this whole thing.
Yeah, and then of course you rob them.
How does that even work?
No, yeah, like that. Like if somebody is resorting to that, they are probably in a bad place.
Well, they're desperate.
They're desperate.
Yeah.
So
well,
just consider being a human.
You presented an interesting scenario now. I don't know if that was entirely genuine, but it is hilarious to think about.
It obviously it is probably not like practical to do that, but there are edge cases where that might work.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's trying to take something for you, just like being honest, like they're not gonna seriously harm you because if they're already in a bad place, they're not trying to make it worse.
Yeah. Well, it depends, right? It obviously depends. There's a number of different factors and variables that you have to consider.
Judgment,
for example,
impairment.
If they're like, if they're mentally unwell, then you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
It could go any which way and they won't be acting rationally to begin with.
That is true. That is assuming that you have good social skills enough to understand when somebody is acting rationally through desperation or completely irrationally. If somebody's acting completely irrationally, they are like either impaired from drugs or other mental illnesses, then just getting out of that situation as fast as you can is the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
But if somebody is just like, hey man, okay, so this is also assuming like you are in some kind of position of power. So like if you are like a store clerk and you're getting robbed, I can pay for your groceries. Like that's yeah. That might be something that may be worth it. It's like, hey, like I'm not going to call the cops if I can just buy you some food. I'm not going to give you cash because I don't know where that's going to go, but I can help you at least a little bit. That might be something that might be worth it if like you don't feel your life is in any immediate danger. There's so many other options to just like get out of situations using good social skills that aren't just fisticuffs all the time.
Right. Which is what the self-defense industry largely tries to peddle.
They really try to tell you to kick somebody in the nuts really hard. Like they really want you to do that. I don't know why.
Yep. Just hit them in the groin until they stop moving.
Yep.
Which I think I mentioned to you a while back. Sounds like the worst cause of death imaginable. Right. Is just like blunt force trauma to the groin until dead.
Repeated blunt force trauma to the groin.
Yeah. That's just like, that is just something.
That doesn't sound fun.
Second to getting eaten alive, depending on what your fantasies are, is like, sounds like the worst possible cause of death. Yeah.
I was just just imagine like having that coroner report. It's like, all right, so what'd they die of? Ooh. All right. So
not something I want to die of. All right. Well, we took a little bit of a tangent into self-defense. I guess that's something we have a lot of opinions on that wasn't on our topics list, but you know what? It's something we talk about often. So there you have it. Prime content. Now, there's something we need to transition to a segment here in a moment because this is our third episode and we haven't gotten to any of the planned segments we have.
Right.
But I want to talk briefly about Netflix's 2022 slate of films.
Yes.
Because they did a little promo a while back, basically as like, it was a very inventive promo, actually.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah, I might show you. Well, I don't know. You don't watch trailers.
Well, okay, so this is the thing. Is this a trailer?
Loryn doesn't watch trailers.
I don't watch trailers. I'm considering reversing that stance.
Really?
It's becoming.
It is becoming trailers.
Yeah, but it's becoming so inconvenient to like my job.
Fair. But here's the thing. In order to supplement this, I watch trailers constantly on a daily basis. I pretty much have a few sources of trailers. It doesn't get me all trailers everywhere. However, it gets me the trailers for pretty much all the major films, and I try to keep up with the latest trailers on a pretty regular basis just to know what's out there and to keep up with the industry and to be able to pass on that information to Loryn if need be, as well as for my own like database, even to just discovering new films, right? It's useful for discovering new films where you see something that's just like, oh, here's a little indie thing that probably would have gone past my radar if I didn't get to see a trailer for it. And it's like, wow, that trailer was really inventive and really intriguing.
Yeah.
And that's probably something, if it came across my available routes of watching, I would take a moment to watch.
Indie films usually have excellent trailers because they kind of have to, like, a lot of indie films will live or die on how good the trailer is.
Yeah. It depends on how successful an indie film it is, though.
I guess that's true.
Because if it barely picked up distribution, so I don't imagine they're gonna have too much budget for the trailer.
But that's why you got to be creative with it.
That's fair. But if you're outsourcing your editor,
I guess that's also
the amount of money you put into it is going to be the amount of creativity you get.
I guess that depends on like how involved you are in the actual creation of your film.
Yeah. Well, the creation of the marketing, at least in this case.
So I guess that's true because we've kind of come at it from the point of like we have to do everything holistically.
Yeah. We're these classic millennial content people that are just the one man show.
Yeah, we are the talent, the accountant, the director.
the manager, the agent. Yeah, it's ridiculous how many hats we have to wear. But anyway, we're getting beside the point. Right. Netflix. So I didn't realize they actually have a very solid slate of films coming up in 2022.
Yeah, because I remember you talking about this, and I remember being really excited about this thing that I didn't see.
Yeah, well, because they put out a promo for it, and this was a while back. This isn't even recent to when we're recording this, but I wanted to talk about it briefly with you just to catch you up on the industry a bit. So they put out a promo for it where they actually they visited the sets of a bunch of these films that were in production and had in scene, in character, some of the actors recite different parts of the promo and then cut them all together.
Okay.
So they'll be like in the middle of a scene from the movie, and then they'll interrupt that scene to like talk to the camera for a bit about Netflix.
That's actually pretty cool.
It's actually a really cool.
That's a power move.
It's a super power move.
That is a
the
power
amount of
move.
Production value that promo has because of it is through the roof.
Yeah,
it's really inventive. It's a nice piece of marketing. Yeah, they actually have a lot of really dope stuff coming out. Much of it isn't necessarily too like relevant to us. Like I think they're doing an Enola Holmes sequel, right? Where it's just like I get that's exciting. That was a very successful film. We didn't see it. I'm not opposed to seeing it. We just never ended up seeing it. Nah. So it's like stuff like that. But I want to talk about a few things that are particularly relevant. I think to our interests, or at least to yours. Well, first off, they ended it with a big reveal, which I actually did not know about until they showed this at the trailer. And then that promo.
What is Netflix revealing? What are they trying to do to get themselves bigger than they already are?
There's a certain movie we're excited for that apparently is going to be distributed on Netflix. And I didn't know that because the first film was not distributed on Netflix.
The first film? This is a
sequel.
A second sequel.
Yes, it's a number 2.
Number 2. Genre.
Mystery.
Modern?
Yeah.
Am I gonna be able to guess this easily? Oh yeah, we do this a lot, by the way.
Yeah. I know. This is like a game we play.
Yeah.
Very easily, I would say.
Oh, Knives Out.
Yeah, Knives Out 2.
Knives Out 2?
Yeah. So Knives Out, the original Knives Out, great film, was distributed on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And so the sequel is going to Netflix, and it makes me wonder
how does that work?
Yeah, you would think these are like exclusive deals, but it turns out they're not that set in stone. But I wonder if this is a design principle for the franchise, because the thing about whodunits is that they're usually like pretty pulpy in the sense that each story is like standalone. The only common thread they have is usually the detective character. That's like the trope. And yeah, it looks like they're doing the same thing, right? The same thing they would do with like a Sherlock Holmes or a Hercule Poirot or anything like that. So yeah, Daniel Craig's detective character, Benoit Blanc, is returning, and then different rotating cast of characters.
That is interesting, but
like major stars, obviously, like with the first film. So yeah, I wonder if they're doing that where they're intentionally going to make it so that each Knives Out film, since they are going to be like whodunit style standalone stories, are going to be distributed on a different platform. I honestly wonder
if the next one's going to be on Hulu?
Next one's going to be on HBO Max.
That's
probably.
What it is.
That'd be my guess. So I'm calling it here now. Knives Out 3 HBO Max.
All right, you heard it here first.
That's really exciting.
That is fascinating. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of that. Actually, a Knives Out 2, and
yeah,
it's on. It's like, is it? I'm assuming it's exclusive distribution.
I mean, with these streaming deals, it usually is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to figure out like, the title Knives Out. It's very like ingrained into like the setting of the first movie, though.
Yeah, but now it's just a franchise. So
yeah, I guess.
Do you want to know very briefly who's in the cast of Knives Out 2?
Hit me with that list.
Because again, we've talked about this.
Chris Evans again.
We've talked about how with whodunits, if you're adapting a whodunit for film, because most are adaptations, Knives Out is one of the few original whodunits.
And a fantastic film.
The thing with whodunits is that you almost inherently have to have an all-star cast if you're going to make a film whodunit. Because otherwise,
there's only one of two ways to go: all-star cast or completely no one's.
That's true. That's true. Those are two equally viable options, because anything in between, and you can tell who the survivor is going to be or who the killer is going to be or whatever the case is, it adds a level of meta predictability just from people's inherent understanding of the industry. Yeah. So, and I love that. I love that you kind of have to have, either an unknown cast or an all-star cast for whodunits. And obviously Knives Out, being of huge production value, is always going with the all-star cast. So get this. Obviously, Daniel Craig is back.
Of course.
Ethan Hawke.
Ooh.
Jessica Henwick.
Who's that again?
She was in that terrible Iron Fist show.
No.
She played Colleen Wing. That's her name.
Oh, okay.
Colleen Wing. Yeah, she plays the female lead in that Iron Fist show, and she was in The Defenders as well.
Okay.
Yeah, you know her.
Yeah.
She was in Star Wars also, of course, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Catherine Hahn, Edward Norton, Dave Bautista.
Oh my gosh.
Kate Hudson. Madeline Klein. Leslie Odom Jr.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh,
yeah, in the room where it happened.
yeah, apparently.
Where the murder happened.
Yeah, he wants to be in the room where it happened, not because for any reason in particular, not to remove evidence or anything.
And Janelle Monáe. I'm not familiar with her, actually.
I don't know. Man, that's Bautista.
Yeah, Bautista.
I love Bautista.
Bautista looks great.
I love Bautista.
They show one shot from Knives Out 2 as their sort of the final shot of the trailer, of the promo. And Bautista already looks like a character.
I'm loving all the roles Bautista is getting these days. Like, I'm loving that he's getting more dramatic roles.
Yeah, and comedic ones as well.
Yeah, I should just say non-action roles. Like, he's
genre stuff.
Yeah,
like all sorts of genre stuff.
He's pulling himself out of that, kind of niche that he pecked his way through.
Yeah. Which, honestly, in my opinion, still like his best film role to date is such a brief one, which is his brief appearance in Blade Runner 2049.
Absolutely.
That is a genuinely compelling like performance from him. And it's for such a tiny part of that movie. It's like a cameo, but it's so integral to the film and he's so perfect in that role. Yeah, I think that's a great testament to how much of filmmaking in terms of acting is directing, you know what I mean? Because I think what we see there is how much a good director can get out of Bautista, even though he's not the most, well formally trained actor. Put him with a director like Denis Villeneuve, and he can get something profound out of him. Yeah.
That brief that whole scene is just so touching and
genuinely like necessary to the story.
Absolutely
right?
necessary,
like it's a perfect opening sequence in my opinion. It's exciting, it's evocative, and it sets the narrative events in motion so well.
Yeah. And the fact that it's Bautista doesn't detract from it at all.
Yeah.
Like usually if you have some big like name, like especially if they're being pulled out of a genre they're not like native to, it can kind of be a little bit of like a shock to see somebody that you're used to acting in a certain way on screen completely different. Like the fact that it's Bautista does not pull away from that scene at all. It elevates it actually, when the climax of that scene hits.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very excellently done. The whole movie's so good. That whole movie is excellent.
Oh yeah. Blade Runner 2049 is a masterpiece.
I love that
I'll stand by that forever.
I love that movie. I want to see it again.
Also, Catherine Hahn, I just realized, I was trying to see, I'm like, that name sounds familiar, but I don't know her by name.
Yeah.
I was just double checking. She played Agnes in WandaVision, aka, spoiler alert,
cover your ears,
Agatha Harkness.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, oh man. She's been in a lot of stuff lately.
I have seen her
really put her on the spot.
I have seen her around.
Because, first off, she's just one of the highlights of WandaVision. She's great in that show.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so that's one last thing I wanted to hit before we close out here.
Yep.
So, do we have time to do a brief segment?
A very brief segment.
All right, you better keep it 10 minutes or less.
Oh, this is probably only going to be 5 minutes.
Here's a little segment we'd like to introduce called Did You Know? So, basically, oftentimes when we're having conversations, we'll just begin a string of tangent by saying, did you know? And then going into a deep dive on a subject that one or the other has just thoroughly researched sometime within the past week, or just kind of stumbled upon as a little trivia fact. This is how I found out everything there is to know about the diamond industry from you, out of random.
Yeah.
So what are you informing me of this time?
I don't remember what brought up this conversation.
It came up very organically, though.
Yeah. Somehow we ended up on this subject, but in the notes, it's titled, How V-Necks Led to Nipple Piercings.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually know exactly how this came up. It's because I was listening to Off Book, the improvised musical podcast, and there's a whole musical segment about deep V-necks.
Deep V-necks. Did you know that since the dawn of time, humans have been putting holes in their skin? And
okay.
That is just a fact of humanity. We've been decorating our bodies with piercings and tattoos all over the world. All sorts of cultures have been decorating themselves in various ways, completely independently of each other. So we don't actually know when the first nipple piercing came around. Like, we don't know who the first person was to think this is a good idea. But somebody had
nips.
Yeah, but somebody had that thought and everybody loved it.
Needless to say is how you kind of appended that on there. Just like,
right.
It goes without saying.
It goes without saying. And everybody collectively thought that was a good idea. No. I mean, maybe. But
clearly it lasted.
Within like traditional cultures and like native Aboriginal cultures, piercings, tattoos are more seen as, I guess, more normal, depending on, areas. Different kinds of body decoration are seen as normal. However, once we get into more civilized, which basically just means like Europe, what do you call that? France, England, those areas, decorating your body seems to be falling a little bit out of favor. However, around the 14th century, there was this trend to make plunging necklines the fashion of, I don't know, the century, right? Mm-hmm. So the necklines got lower and lower and lower until eventually, in dresses, you basically had
a deep V.
A deep V, half a nip poking out, right? So it's like, well, I've already got this nip showing. I might as well put some jewelry on it. So this was in 14th century.
14th century.
I want to say France.
This was with men?
This was with women.
Why are the women's nips hanging out?
Because that was the fashion of the time. So
it was also France.
It's also France. That I'm sure that has something to do with it. Historically, bare breasts haven't been like as taboo as they are now. Apparently, that can be traced back to, I want to say, the 18th century. The Queen of England at that time, I want to say Queen Victoria, kind of made the fashion a little bit more modest, and that started to become the civilized nation's standard for dress. And then it became more modest. People started to dress more with long sleeves, long skirts, but bare skin was not necessarily taboo all the time. So plunging necklines, totally a thing, to the point where it's like, might as well decorate them because they're already hanging out there. Like, I sneezed and one popped out. So there's no confirmed cases, I guess. Well, there's anecdotal evidence of like high fashion women in the 14th century in France decorating their nipples with jewelry and piercings. And from that point forward, that kind of seems to be a trend, right? Deep necklines, exposed chests, and then suddenly we hit this wall where the high button collars, long sleeves, long skirts, no skin showing. And that kind of goes into...
And that killed the nipple piercing.
Unfortunately, killed the nipple. For better or worse, the nipple has not seen the light of day in a favorable light since. But in the 70s, or I want to say early 60s into the 70s, the BDSM community brought the nipple back.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and that's always fun. But that's a whole separate thing. But that is how the deep V...
Wait, they brought the nipple back, or they brought the nipple piercing?
The nipple piercing back. Okay. Oh, also the nipple too.
Yeah, I mean,
the piercing came with it when they tugged on the nipple piercing with a chain.
Okay. That's enough of that for now.
Yeah, but Deep V brought nipple piercings into popular culture, at least for a few centuries.
Fascinating. But this is like before we had any conception of a V-neck, though. Like
V-neck
wasn't a branding thought.
No,
at that point.
I mean, I think that started around the time we started getting like T-shirts and like mass-marketed, mass-produced clothing.
The Industrial Revolution wouldn't happen for a little while after that. In which case you would get mass-produced, manufactured clothing. And
because
things of that nature.
All clothing, it's weird to think about, but like all clothing previous to cotton mills were all handmade.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. Because like there wasn't somebody going out there like with a machine pumping out all these, garments. Seamstresses were a very important job. So if you wanted a dress or you wanted anything, it would be tailored to your body. So
yeah, everything was bespoke.
Everything was bespoke.
Point.
So there was a lot of room for these people to experiment with, different fashions and express themselves in different ways. So the deep V as like a concept, I don't think came around. I don't think came around until whenever, like, shirts became a thing. But yeah,
it's probably
for these
Elvis
dresses.
Presley's fault.
Oh, well, you know what? That is a very deep V now that I think about it. that is a plunging, for better or worse.
You see, I think I mentioned to you that they're making an Elvis Presley biopic that actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, you told me about that. Who's playing?
It's just called Elvis.
Who's playing Elvis?
I have no idea. I don't recognize the actor.
Not a known.
I don't think I've seen him.
Not a known
before.
actor. Okay.
I mean, he probably is. I just never seen him.
Right. Well, I mean, not anybody within like our specific
experience. Yeah. A bit outside of that, but I mean, some people were complaining that he doesn't necessarily look the part, but he does play the part pretty well, it seems.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, that looks fascinating. It's a sweeping epic of a biopic. I know a lot of people say biopic, but I don't think that makes any logical sense.
No, it's not symbiote.
Yeah, dang it. Not the symbiotes again.
It's the same thing, right? Like
Yeah, exactly. Symbiotes.
Yeah.
It's a word.
Yes, it is. That is very true. It is a word.
Anyway, before we get carried away on another tangent, I say we wind things down here. But thank you all very much for listening. As a brief announcement, some things have happened since the last time we recorded. First off, this show has premiered since we last recorded. It wasn't a thing for the first 2 episodes. We were recording in a vacuum. But now we have a show and we're being distributed. We got syndicated on a number of platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. And we're on Stitcher, for those of you who do the Stitch. I don't know. Apparently Stitcher is very popular, but I don't use it. I don't know anybody who does. But
I've literally never heard of it until you're like, we have to syndicate on this platform. I was like, I don't know what that is. I use Spotify.
Yeah, I'm a Google Podcast person myself, but the point is, you're probably on one of these, if not YouTube.
Statistically significant amount of you are on one of these.
If not YouTube, which is accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm. So, well, technically all of these are, but it's just about preference.
Right.
But YouTube, anybody could get on YouTube. We got a video version of this podcast. It doesn't feature any of our faces, however, because that would be way too much work.
Mm-hmm. And we're trying to not do that.
We're trying to do less work, not more, please. I say less work, but what we did instead was Loryn did a really dope Hypercube animation, which we talked about in the first episode.
Yeah.
So, that can be seen now.
Yeah, avert your eyes. If you stare at it for too long, it will eat your soul.
It's something of that effect. It's very hypnotic. So, yeah. Wherever you find your podcast and prefer to listen, feel free to find us on there, subscribe, definitely rate us on Apple Podcasts if you feel so inclined, because that helps people to discover the podcast. But even just listening to the podcast and subscribing on your favorite platform or following, whatever they may call it, that always helps, and that helps to get it out there and get the algorithms pointed in that direction, being like, hey, this is an active RSS feed that people seem to be interested in.
Just interact with it in your favorite way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You do you. And of course, you can find links to all these on the podcast page on the website if you're getting a little lost. So, yeah, that's one thing I just wanted to plug before we end here. This show is now officially on the road, I guess. Not literally on the road, because that actually implies touring with it, which we are not doing with this podcast.
Not yet.
Not yet, anyway. Who knows what the future may hold. Thank you all very much for listening. This show is mixed and edited by Raphael Pacheco with theme music by Mono Memory. And until next time, we'll see y'all later. God bless.
See ya. We have to come up with an outro for this thing, man.
I always say God bless though, so I could do that.
Yeah.
But you gotta work on your outro.
Okay, fine.